All right, so we're going to take a look at sum and difference identities. These are the formulas. The thing to notice is that if you start on the top, you stay on the top. If you go on the bottom, you stay on the bottom. Okay, so that's how you read this, just so you can compress it. Again, the top is the top, the bottom is the bottom on all of them. Top is the top one, bottom is the bottom one. Okay, on all of them, just to compress it. All right, so sine of 75, how can we rewrite this in angles that we know? Well, I know 45 degrees. 45 plus 30 is going to give me 75. Use those formulas to rewrite it. So my A is going to be the first one, 45. My B is second, which is 30. So sine of 45 plus the 30. Because we're using the top one, we're going to use the top one, so that's plus. So sine of A, which is sine of 45, cosine of B, which is cosine of 30, plus cosine of A, which is cosine of 45, and sine of B, which is sine of 30. And then all you're going to do is you're going to evaluate it using your left-hand shortcut. Okay, so use the shortcut, not the calculator. So let me remind you what it is. The bottom x is cosine, y is sine, and you write it as cosine, then sine. Cosine is your first, sine is your second, and it's radical over 2. So let's actually go ahead and do this, right? So we're going to start with sine of 45. So 0, 30, 45. You put that finger down. So you need cosine and sine. So sine is the second, which is radical 2, because there are 2 fingers, over 2. All right, let's do cosine of 30. 30 goes 0, 30. So that's the finger you put down. Because you want cosine is the first one, so you have 3 fingers. So it's radical 3 over 2. Cosine of 45, that's going to be 0, 30, 45. So you put that finger down. Cosine is the first one, so radical 2 over 2, 2 fingers. Sine of 30, you're going to put the second one down. Sine is the second, so that's 1. Radical 1 is 1 over 2. Okay, so really practice being good because it just makes things faster. Simplify, okay, and there are many ways that you can simplify, but we're going to use this way to do it. Let's go ahead and multiply the radicals. So that's radical 6, multiply the denominator, multiply the top, that's radical 2, multiply the bottom, 4. And now because the denominators are the same, what can we do? We can add them. So that's going to be radical 6 plus 2 on the numerator, and then keep the denominator of 4. This is a listening check, color in that answer. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at another example. This time we want to use subtraction according to the question. So what two numbers subtracted will give me 165? I can do, again, when I see a 5, I always do 45. So what number 210 minus 45 will give me 165? And this is not the only option. There are lots of options, but this is what I'm going to use. So A is 210, B is 45. So we have subtraction in the problem. So sign and subtraction is the bottom, so we'll use the bottom. All right, so it's going to be minus. Okay, let's fill out what we have. So sine A cos B, so sine of the first one, sine of 210, cosine of the second, which is 45, minus cos A sine B. So cos A, which is 210, sine B, which is 45. So that's 210 minus 45. All right, so we're going to evaluate that using your left-hand rule. So again, I'm just going to draw my reference, my coordinate plane. And the only one I don't know is 210, but I'm going to show you how to get those. So I'm going to use the ones I know, which is 45. We've done those before. So again, second finger down, I have 2 on the top, 2 fingers, and 2 fingers on the bottom. So I've got cosine and sine. So cosine is radical 2 over 2, 2 fingers, and sine is radical 2 over 2, 2 fingers. These are the only ones I don't know, but I'm going to use my reference angle to find them. So where's 210? That's 90, 180. 210 is in the third quadrant, right? Somewhere there. How far away is it from the x-axis? So 210 minus 180 is going to give me 30. So it's really 30. So I can use what I know for 30. Okay, and then I can, don't worry about writing the minus y and positive y. I'm going to change my mind in a second. All students take calculus. That's where everything is positive, right? So I'm going to go to 30, and I'm looking for sine and cosine. So cosine is 3 fingers on top. So radical 3 over 2 for cosine. This is a listening check. Put a box around example 2. Put a box around example 2. And sine is 1 finger on the bottom, so radical 1, which is 1 over 2. Okay. Now I need to deal with whether it's positive or negative. In that quadrant, only tan is positive, so that means both of these are negative. All right, so multiplying fractions, multiply the top, so that's going to be negative radical 2. Multiply the bottom, it's going to be 4. Minus times minus is a positive. Then multiply the top, radical 6. Multiply the bottom, 4. Now I can add and subtract them because they're the same denominator, and I'm just going to change the order and make it radical 6 minus radical 2 over the 4. All right, so let's go ahead and do another example, and I'm just going to start you off on this one. I'm not actually going to do it. So I've got negative 15. Again, anytime I see a 5, I always do 45, but because I want it to be negative, I'm going to do 30 minus 45. That's going to give me negative. All right, so A is 30, B is 45. And now we're dealing with cosine of 30 plus minus 45, so minus. So when I look at the formula, I look at cosine, minus is on the bottom, so I'm going to use the bottom plus. Okay, cosine, cosine. So it's cosine of 30, cosine of 45. Then sine, sine. So sine of 30, sine of 45. So all you're doing is using the formulas. Then you're going to work these out. So go ahead and work it out and simplify it. I'm going to do another example. So we're going to look at tan. And this time we have radicals. So just make it into degrees. So how do I simplify top and bottom? Divide by 2, then divide by 2 again. So I'll get 45 divided by 3, which is 15. So we're looking for tan of 15. And how do I get that? Tan of 50 with a subtraction sign. 45 again, minus 30. This is a listening check. Color in 45 minus 30. Color in 45 minus 30. Okay, so now my A is 45, my B is 30. So tan of 15, which is tan of 45 minus 30, is going to give me, let's see, since we are subtracting, we're using the bottom, so minus and plus. So we have tan of A, which is tan 45. The listening check. Color in tan. Color in tan. Tan of B, which is tan 30 with a subtraction sign. On the bottom, I have 1 plus tan of A, which is 45, tan of B, which is 30. Okay, we're going to work these out. So tan of 45, tan of 30 minus 1 plus tan of 45 and tan of 30. So tan of 45, let's start with that. Sine over cosine, right? So I need to find sine of 45 and cosine of 45. Just like before, that's x-axis is cosine, y-axis is sine, and it's radical over 2. So 45 is that finger down. That's 2 fingers on top, 2 fingers on bottom. So both sine and cosine are radical 2 over 2. So what is radical 2 over 2 divided by radical 2 over 2? 1, the same thing. So tan of 30 would be sine over cosine of 30, right? So sine and cosine of 30, which would be that finger down. Cosine is 3 fingers on top. Sine is 1 finger. Okay, so sine, we're starting off with sine, right? So that's 1 finger. So that's radical 1, which is 1. I still wrote down radical over 2. Divided by 3 fingers, radical 3 over 2. Keep, so 1/2. Change, and flip. All right, what happens? We can cross out those 2's, and we have 1 over radical 3. You're not supposed to have a radical on the bottom, but I'm just going to leave it for right now. All right, tan of 45 is the same thing as 1. Tan of 30 is the same thing, which is 1 over radical 3. All right, let's set it up. So we have 1 minus 1 over radical 3 over 1 plus, and then 1 times 1 over radical 3 is the same thing. And we're just going to put that in the calculator, and you're going to get roughly 0.268. Okay. You're going to also do this last question. So there are 4 different ways that you can represent this. What are the 4 different ways? Let's practice.